Andrew Napolitano. And Judge, as this story unfolds, will you, because I know you've said that he's a hero.
I have.
But at the same time, if he because he just said basically this is what they're doing. He did not release documents. He's not a private Manning yet. Would that change your opinion if he starts releasing names of CIA people, which Peter King has been all concerned about?
I don't know that he's in a position to do that. I believe that he has shared a lot of documents with Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who wrote the stories in the Guardian and were picked up in the Washington Post. I think that Greenwald is a very responsible journalist and probably wouldn't release names. But I object to the focus on Snowden as a person, as a human being, and trying to analyze his motivations. The reason I do that is it takes our eye off the ball. The eye should be on the ball of the most outrageous, extensive, massive violation of the Constitution in peacetime in the history of the country. To divert attention from that to, well, the guy got out of the Army early. He's a high school dropout.
Yeah.
Really is an effort to blame the messenger for the unsavory nature of the message.
You know you have to have a villain if you're going to be the victim. If you're a victim, I'm the president, I'm the victim of this, I'm the government, I'm the victim of this, I have to have a villain. The villain is Ed Snowden.
The victim is everybody whose emails and texts and phone calls were surveilled by the government.
Yes.
And the villain is the Congress for enacting legislation that permitted it to happen. The NSA lawfully followed the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is the most damnable, abominable, hateful, unconstitutional piece of legislation since the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Sensenbrenner says they went way beyond. He was surprised. He was one of the authors of the Patriot Act, and he said they went beyond it. Is that where this is going to go?
Look, we started out with the Fourth Amendment. You want a search warrant, you present probable cause of crime, and the evidence must, quote, particularly describe the place to be searched or the person or thing to be seized, close quote. I quote precisely from the Fourth Amendment. Then FISA comes along and they lower probable cause of crime to probable cause of being a foreign agent. Then they amended FISA to probable cause of being a foreign person. Then the Patriot Act came along and lowered the bar again to probable cause of speaking to a foreigner. So we've gone from probable cause of crime as the basis for a search warrant to probable cause of speaking to a foreigner. They don't bear any rational or legal resemblance to each other.
At the same time, the court of public opinion is, at first they said, oh, this metadata stuff, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. The majority said, big deal. Until the word came out that maybe these internet providers were all of a sudden allowing them to look or have access to your Gmails, your photos, your documents, and things like that. But let me ask you a legal question, though, because there's a ton of cases that are coming to the courts.
Right.
Everybody's suing. And Rand Paul is one of them that says, I'm going to go right to the Supreme Court. Tell me about that process, and do you have hope that the judicial branch of the government will do the right thing?
I don't, because they don't like to hear these cases. They like the political question doctrine, which is basically a way for them to say this is not properly before us. If you don't like what the executive branch is doing, vote for a new president. Some of them might very well say, I realize the Patriot Act was validly enacted and it is lawful, but it's profoundly unconstitutional. We're going to invalidate this challenged portion of the Patriot Act, and the NSA ought to have known it was unconstitutional. I don't think these litigations will succeed. I do think they'll succeed in making a point, but I don't think they'll succeed in getting damages.
Well, that's what Justice Thomas said in Obamacare was, if you don't like this, go vote for some new members of Congress.
But, can you think of two presidents more opposite in their value judgments than George W. Bush and Barack Obama? And yet they did nearly the same thing with respect to national security. In fact, Bush didn't even follow the law. In the initial NSA spying was without any warrants from the FISA court. Obama, to his credit, and my value judgment is not the same as his, you know that by a long stretch, at least followed the law and went to the FISA court. Unconstitutional though it may be, he did go to the FISA court and he did follow the law. But the problem here is we have the natural right to be left alone. called privacy. Jefferson called it the right to be left alone. That's why we have the Fourth Amendment. So that we don't have dragnets and fishing expeditions like British soldiers used to do to us.
The more a government monitors people, the less the people can do. It just puts a wet blanket on us. But I got to go back. This isn't the first time. And I was flipping through the book that you wrote, I don't know, 6 months ago, Theodore and Woodrow, about Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. And you went through and excoriated them about the fact that they just stomped all over the Constitution. So this isn't the first time.
Correct. Not only did they stomp on the Constitution, they boasted about it. The modern era presidents deny that they're stomping on the Constitution. Wilson and Roosevelt boasted about it. Roosevelt started the FBI after the Congress rejected it. He just put aside some money in the Justice Department and said, you're going to start wearing badges and guns, and I'll tell you what to do. It was almost like a private police force paid for out of the federal treasury after the Congress said, no, we don't need a federal police department. It's not the job of the feds to have cops. And then he boasted about it.
All right. But, I mean, so I used them, and we're going to talk about Lincoln later in the program, but Lincoln ran roughshod right over habeas corpus. And it's always been my impression that presidents have, in time of war generally, have gone off the rails constitutionally, and the courts come along and bring them back. But you surprised me that your old branch of government, not
all of my colleagues share the reverence for the Constitution that I do, and I can't speak for them. I can only speak for myself. I can also speak for the plain language of the Constitution. There is no exception in there for wartime. The Fourth Amendment doesn't say except in time of war.
No, but they've done it, and the courts have brought it back, is my point.
Well, sometimes the courts have let them do it. Look at Korematsu. You know, the Japanese exclusion cases. The Supreme Court of the United States said that FDR can arrest people without a charge of crime, without any evidence of culpability, just on the basis of their race. I mean, that is utterly hateful, condemnable today. And it's still the law. It has yet to be reversed. The Congress purported to reverse it in the Reagan.
In the books?
Yes, the Congress purported to reverse it in the Reagan era when they paid the survivors of the Japanese internment camps $20,000 a person. That's not even the interest on what they lost for the years that they were incarcerated.
So we've stomped on it in the past. Let's see, because we're right at that. We're at a crucial constitutional point in our nation's history.
We are, and maybe we're at the point where the public will say enough is enough.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, always great to see you.
Tommy, it's always a pleasure no matter what we're talking about.
Still to come on.